Welcome to the Living the Fit Life podcast, episode 65. I'm your host, Chad Mueller. And if this is your first time listening to the Living the Fit Life podcast, welcome. Thank you for joining. We dive into fitness, nutrition, recovery, and something we call the X factor, sort of like mindset, motivation, that sort of thing. And those that have been around, you know the drill. This is our season. This is the second episode for season 3. And I'm really excited for today's conversation and our fantastic guest. She's done an Olympic weightlifting meet. She's been a nutrition coach, CrossFit coach. She's been hustling hard in the CrossFit space, previously working at HWPO, Morning Chalk Up, and has recently made the switch to HWPO. And she's also the host of a really cool, exciting new podcast called Gym Class Heroes. Please welcome a super excited Preslie Hirsch. How are you doing, Preslie?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. It's quite the resume. How does it make you feel when you hear all that? Do you ever get a chance to sort of press pause and look back at some of the cool stuff you've been part of recently?
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was like, wow, I have had a lot of jobs and done a lot of things. Huh? No, I probably should press pause more and reflect on it. I feel like I always have so much going on that I try to just be pretty focused on what's happening right now, which is really cool stuff. But I probably should take more inventory of what we've done so far, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's someone that's sort of passionate about CrossFit space and even like really into the brands and stuff like that. It's pretty cool that you've had a chance to work at those kind of companies and super exciting. So you've been with HWPO only for like a few weeks, right?
I think it's about a month now. Yeah.
Okay.
But not much longer for sure.
And how's that been going? Pretty exciting?
Oh, it's amazing. It's like a dream job. Yeah. I truly, I think I love my work more than I ever have, for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congrats.
Thanks.
Awesome. And then we just finished the Open, sort of officially over. And I was listening to one of your podcasts on the Gym Class Heroes, and you said it's cool to care. I wanted to bring that up because it resonates well with me, and I think even for our community on this podcast, we call them the weekend warriors or the corporate athletes that listen to the podcast. And we had a great group of people in my local area doing the Open for like a lot of them actually for the first time. And it's cool that like, you know, we aren't really here to make the CrossFit Games or go super far in the journey of it all. But it was cool that you said that because I would agree a lot. It's really cool to care about the Open. And for you jump back in the Open. You've made it to the quarterfinals, which congratulations.
Thank you.
How did the Open go for you this year? Like, I know you had an injury, but like the Open was just was it a goal to make the quarterfinals? Do you always make it a goal to do the Open or do specific goals that relate to the Open? Or do you just kind of do it just to be part of the community and have some fun?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to touch on that, on it being cool to care, you know, I really had to take my own advice a little bit in thinking about quarterfinals because I do think that it is really cool to care deeply about something and to not be ashamed if you are trying really hard for something, right? And so I think that I just all the time in the gym, I hear people that show up, consistently at 5:30 a.m. or they, they're clearly putting in the work. And then when it comes time to something for a competition or the Open, they're like, well, I'm not going to the CrossFit Games, but, and they always need to caveat it. And it's like, no, you can still be proud of your effort and you can still, crush it, whatever that looks like to you. It's not like you would never play golf because you're not going on the PGA Tour. And it's not like you would never, do certain things because you're never going to reach the top 1%. So it doesn't make sense in CrossFit either. And I've totally fallen into the same thing. It was a goal of mine to make quarterfinals. And then I was really excited about it. And then when I went to post about it, I was like, that feels kind of silly. Like a lot of people that follow me already made it, or a lot of people that I'm friends with, like they already know they're going to make it, And then I really had to catch myself and be like, no, I do care. And I did really want this. So like, it's worth celebrating. So I was trying to make quarterfinals. I made it in 2021 and was very excited then. And I was training a lot of CrossFit at that time. And then after that, I've done weightlifting meets here and there, but I really wanted to make a push to get pretty competitive in weightlifting. And so I stopped doing a lot of CrossFit when I was living in Austin and focused primarily on weightlifting. I did the Arnold last March, where I ended up partially tearing my elbow on a snatch. And I didn't see a lot of, I'm sure that injury probably has lots of different outcomes for people, but for me, I didn't see any improvement for 7 months, and really could not do a lot of movements. And then when I moved back to Phoenix, I started seeing a PT, Dr. Gina, who's been amazing. And I remember when I went to her, probably like November, I was like, I just want to do the open. Like at this moment, I can't do pull-ups. I can't do toes to bar. I can't go upside down. Like I couldn't do anything with my elbow. And I was like, I really just want to be healthy enough by the open to get through the open. And then as I was progressing, I was like, okay, I think maybe I can make a push for this. So it was just very satisfying that all those days of doing the rehab that I didn't want to do and paying for the needling that I didn't want to do and all of these things to then make it to the next step was really cool. And to do it healthy. I was ready to re-tear my elbow on that snatch workout if I had to, but I'm glad I didn't have to.
Good comeback story. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, the whole cooler care thing, I feel like this is a great slogan. I think it's like, it's a pretty punchy statement. And I would agree, like, I would say even before COVID, I jumped into the golf. I never did golf when I was younger, and it kind of became a second sport for me. And I never played golf. So like, I started really like, at like, you know, shooting 120, having a few drinks and just socially playing golf. And then I was like, oh, this could be something to kind of like actually try to get better at. And, I love the idea of like, you know, taking on like, and golf is such a simple thing. Like most people just do it recreationally, and they just go out there, get frustrated. Sometimes they have a good time, but it's like, I've never thought about like being a professional at it, but like, I would agree with you. Like if I'm going to do something, I might as well try to be the best I can at it.
Totally. And to own it and not be ashamed of that, and not be like, just because I'm never going to be the tippy top doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, I often ask this question to almost all of our guests, but I would like to get sort of an intro into sort of where like fitness or athletics started for you. Like where were you an athlete at a younger age, or did you just scramble into fitness at a later age? How does that story begin for you?
Yeah, so I definitely have played sports as long as I can remember. I've always been a very active kid. From literally my earliest memories, I was playing basketball and flag football with the kids at the park down the street. I played competitive volleyball. I played like club all through school. I played high school. And then it changed a little bit towards the end of high school. I was hoping to play in college, of course, back row. I guess you can't tell from this podcast, but I'm on the shorter side. So I was hoping to play in college, and then ended up experiencing some really serious health issues, and basically was told I could not keep playing volleyball. Like I had to tailor it way back. Huge life change. And so at that time I decided to start working at Lifetime Fitness, you know, your variation of a Globo gym if you don't have that. And just for the gym membership, and to do some like bodybuilding exercises so that I could do something to maintain some activity that maybe wasn't so stressful on my body. And then there was a lot of people that competed in shows like bodybuilding shows and figure shows. And I was really inspired by that, partially inspired, and partially I struggled a lot with eating disorder type behaviors, and just those kinds of struggles growing up, and at that time in particular. And so I really thought that if I could go on stage and win awards for how I look, that I would finally feel amazing and like this athlete and be proud of my body. So I got really into bodybuilding, did very well. I'm really good at starving myself, it turns out. However, did not lead to the fulfillment and happiness, spoiler alert, that one might hope. So after much counseling and therapy and getting all the resources I need, that led me then to CrossFit, which has absolutely changed my life. And I started CrossFit in 2015. So it was a roundabout way to get to the healthy relationship that I have with fitness and nutrition now. But it has had like definite chapters for sure.
Okay. Well, and like, how did you, like, what made you step into CrossFit? Like, how did you find CrossFit from that? Because I mean, that's a significant difference of what you're doing to what CrossFit is.
Oh, I was making fun of CrossFitters all the time. Like I was like, I don't understand why you're swinging your pull-ups, and, you know, just total one-track mind behavior. And truly, when I was bodybuilding, you know, you would, and there's of course different ways to do it, but in my experience, I would diet down really hard and get really lean and get really dehydrated and do a show. And then you would gain a lot of weight afterwards, and not even necessarily whether you struggled with binging or not. You're just giving your body the adequate calories it needs to live and have a more fulfilled life, and drinking adequate amounts of water. And if you've been deplenished of those things, then you gain weight. So I basically just kept going through this cycle of losing weight and gaining weight. And it was so hard physically. It was hard mentally. It was hard on my health. And I kind of just got to a point where I was like, there has to be another way. There has to be something I don't understand. There's no way everybody's doing this. And I did start consuming a lot more content, and try to be more thoughtful of not just consuming, this was really kind of like when Instagram was starting to blow up. And so I was trying to not just follow other bodybuilders, but follow people that seemed like they had healthy relationships with food and looked strong. And I watched one of the early CrossFit documentaries, and I remember seeing, Camille LeBlanc, and I was like, well, she has abs, but she doesn't look hungry. And just kind of putting all of these pieces together. And so at the time, a guy that I was dating did CrossFit. He's in the military. And so I remember he kept trying to get me to try it. And then he went out of town, and I was like, okay, I'm going to drop in just so I can prove that I don't like it and be like, see, I tried it, not for me. And I'll never forget, I walked in, and the girl sitting at the front desk said something to the effect of, you have strong legs, like you're going to fit in here. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, my bodybuilding coach always wants my legs to be smaller, and you just told me that this is where they belong. And so then from there, I got my level 1 like a month later. I was like totally bought in, did my first workout with like burpees and wall balls, and was like, yep, this is for me.
Okay. Gotcha. So, it sounds like the period of when you were sort of doing bodybuilding and you're doing shows, how many shows did you end up doing?
2. I did 2 shows.
2.
I tried to do several. Anyone that's tried knows that it's a lot harder than it seems to get lean enough for a show, but yeah.
When you look back at that time, do you have bittersweet feelings about that time? Because it sounds like you came out of it and you found a new place. It sounds like you probably learned a few things, but it also sounds like it was a rough time for you. Like, when you look back at that time, what do you think?
Yeah, I wouldn't trade the experience for the world. I don't think I would have found fitness and health in the same way if I hadn't gone through that. And I ran a nutrition coaching business. I ended up changing my major in college. I got so into this whole concept that I changed my major from journalism to nutrition. I ran a nutrition coaching business that was super successful for a few years after college. And I don't think I would have had the empathy for my clients, the experience, maybe the passion for the knowledge for all of those things if I hadn't gone through that, for sure. So I hope that other people don't have to experience the same dark and challenging times that I did to get there, but definitely wouldn't trade it for the world, for sure. I can look back on it with a lot of admiration for myself.
Okay. Okay, cool. So then you jump in the CrossFit. Like many people, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, you're right into it. You've already said that so I guess now up to this point, you've made it to the quarterfinals twice. What were the early days of CrossFit for you? Like, was it something that you were able to kind of just jump in and you felt like you're pretty efficient at CrossFit? You're pretty good. It sounds like you have an athletic background. You were pretty equipped with bodybuilding. So you are somewhat of aware of your body. Did you feel like it was pretty easy for you? It's like, this is where I belong and I can just be successful right out of the gate?
No.
Okay.
I feel like it's been so hard. There's still so many movements that I struggle so much with. It took me a year to get double unders. I remember I couldn't kick up. Handstand push-ups are probably my best movement. And it took me 6 months to kick upside down. I just had never been upside down. I didn't trust myself to carry my own body weight upside down. Even up on the wall, doing wall walks was way out of my comfort zone. Swinging on rings or bars, and then I think I've gotten better over time at being a little more coordinated, but I'm certainly not naturally very coordinated. And I slipped off the bar and got a concussion pretty early on doing pull-ups. I slipped off the rings one time and broke my foot. All injuries that were not CrossFit's fault and 100% my fault. And so I definitely have struggled over the last several years. But I do think that's part of the fun. I really do like challenges. And I think CrossFit is so good for obviously a lot of things, but I've always just been very busy. I don't think I've been bored since I was 4. I just will find things to fill my time. And so CrossFit's so good you can modify it based on your lifestyle. You can modify it based on the time you have or where you're at. And so when I look back, sometimes I'm like, dang, I've been doing this for a long time. Like I should be better. And then I'm like, but I haven't dedicated the last 8 years to CrossFit. I've dedicated it to all kinds of cool things, years of traveling and building businesses and building my career. And CrossFit has just fit in that really well, you know? So it definitely has not come easy, but it's so good for adapting to whatever it else is that you're doing, you know?
I also think your standard for like being good at something is probably pretty high too. Cause like, I mean, 6 months to do handstands is not that long. I feel like for something
Well,
like
on the
so.
wall, not like freestanding, like just to kick on the wall. It took me a long time to feel comfortable do that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, okay. I get you. I get you. I mean, I think, I would agree. Like, I mean, I guess it seems like you are someone that actively seeks out like new challenges. Like I mean, you have quite the resume of like fitness challenges or fitness, whatever we call them. But like, you've done a bodybuilding show, you've done probably hundreds of CrossFit competitions. You've done let's call the quarterfinal a significant, like pretty competitive CrossFit competition. Obviously want to talk about the Olympic lifting meet. So it's like, are you actively looking around, seeking out for new challenges to kind of test yourself from a fitness perspective?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it keeps you engaged, and it's also, I think it's really rewarding. And I feel like that's part of the point of life in my particular lens, is to get uncomfortable, challenge yourself. It doesn't appeal to me to keep doing what I already know I can do, you know?
Love that. I love that. I mean, we have a big community listening that do kind of like a hybrid of like both. Like we have a lot of endurance folks
Cool.
that also do CrossFit, and CrossFit that do as endurance. So like we've talked to a lot of people that have done Ironman, marathons, triathlons. Like, have you tested out the endurance world yet?
I did do a half marathon once, and purely
Not
for that
surprising.
purely for that, like I've always thought it would be cool to do an Ironman. I don't know if I'll ever get to prioritizing that, but I just think that's such an amazing feat, and or even just a triathlon or something of that kind. So I dipped my toe in with a half marathon. The thing that I just personally didn't really enjoy it, and not that I always enjoy CrossFit, but I do like the process, even when it hurts and it's hard. And I didn't love running. I didn't love, like, even when I finished the half marathon, I was like, oh, I'm so glad that's done. But like, it didn't quite hit the same for me. So I'm not sure if I'll ever revisit that, but I do think, the fact that people can do incredible things in endurance sports is so admirable. I'm not sure if it's like my avenue for fulfillment, but I also think we change all the time. I could probably say this and then next year be like, that sounds like a fun thing to try. So who knows?
Yeah, it sounds like as you're talking, if I chatted with you in the next 3 years, you would probably already have completed.
Yeah. Something will change. Yeah. At this moment, it doesn't sound appealing to me. Yeah.
Okay. I get you. I'm the same. I have a lot of folks that want me to do endurance, and I'm still, I'm just like, I'm not sure if I enjoy that. I'm not sure if I'm ready to take my Saturdays and train for 4 hours. Not sure yet.
Yeah. And it's not even like a hard thing. Like, anything you're going to achieve is going to be hard. It's not like I just don't want to run because I don't like running, which I don't, but like, it just, it doesn't give me quite the same
It's not engaging
fire. Yeah, that like weightlifting does, at this point in my life.
Gotcha. So speaking of, you were saying you did the Arnold last year. Have you done more than that lifting meet?
Yeah. So the way that something like the Arnold works, or any kind of national meet, is you have to do another meet to qualify for that. So you'll usually have to do a local meet, some kind of sanctioned USAW meet to meet a certain entry total to get into the national meet. And so I've done probably 3 or 4 national meets. Like I did under 25 championships, university nationals, an American Open series, and the Arnold, I think maybe 4. And then I've done a handful.
This is a world I don't know. This is a world I don't know much about, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It's kind of similar. Yeah. If you take like the Olympics out of it, which is kind of its own process, then it's somewhat similar if you think about like open, quarterfinals, semis, and kind of that process is like anyone can do a local weightlifting meet, and any gym can basically put one on as long as they're, signed up with USAW. And then from there, you just have to meet a certain combined lifts, I lifted this much. And then you can qualify for bigger meets, which just run on a very regular cadence. There's like 3 American Open series, which is kind of like the most attainable. Above that is like the American Open. The Arnold is one of the American Open series ones. And then there's like nationals and things like that. So an American Open finals, which is a little higher. So it's kind of similar in that like you basically just have to be able to lift more to be able to move on to the next one.
Right. Makes sense. So you get into CrossFit, and then obviously you're sprinkling Olympic lifting, and then you just say one day, I need to challenge myself and I want to do Olympic lifting meet. How long did you train leading up to all that? And like, were you doing CrossFit once during the day and then doing another session that was just Olympic lifting? Like how does that training change?
Yeah, my first weightlifting meet, I did not train very much. I want to say I did it maybe 8 months into CrossFit, definitely not very long. And I had no Olympic lifting, no barbell background whatsoever. And I had no plan and was just practicing lifts like before or after CrossFit class. And I went and bombed out and I missed all my snatches. And if you don't know how weightlifting works, you do all 3 snatches first, and then you have a little break, and then you do all 3 clean and jerks. Mm-hmm. And if you don't make a snatch, you don't get to play anymore. Like you have to get on the board to clean and jerk. And so I didn't make any snatches, but because it was local meet and I kind of knew the people, they let me clean and jerk just for the experience. But it doesn't count. Like you don't get anything. It basically looks like you weren't there. And so that was my first meet, and I remember being so devastated. And at some point I ended up doing a lot of reflection that like I hadn't really earned that yet. Like I think that early on in my CrossFit career or weightlifting career, I would get frustrated that I wouldn't make certain lifts or be able to do muscle ups, during the 2015 Open. And, and then in retrospect, I can be like, why did I think I deserved that? Like, had I really worked on my muscle ups? Had I sought out weightlifting help, or was I just snatching with my friends after class and thought that maybe that meant I could do it with any kind of proficiency at a meet, And I kind of struggled with that for a while. I would do little local meets and lift pretty poorly. I would miss lifts, or I would go super light just to like say that I did it, but it wasn't really challenging myself. And then I ended up taking kind of a break and leaning more into CrossFit. And over the last couple of years, I've hired weightlifting coaches and invested a lot more in doing more of a plan. I still do a lot of CrossFit. I love CrossFit. And I think being in the class setting, I think is important socially, mentally, emotionally, physically. And so I'll do class if I'm like getting ready for a meet, 12 weeks out or whatever, I'll do class like probably 3 or 4 days a week. In the morning, and then do weightlifting, the other 5 days, like in the afternoon. I tend to weightlift better in the afternoon. And then if I'm just like right now, I'm just trying to get my elbow back, like build up some volume again, I'll do CrossFit 5 or 6 days a week and then weightlifting in the afternoons, most days. So I kind of split it more evenly if I'm not training for something.
Okay. So you're at least for now, and previously, it seems like Olympic lifting is still like you want to continue doing meets. Yeah, cool.
For sure. So, yeah, I would like to make nationals before I'm 30. That's been a long-term goal.
Okay, cool. And would you say like actually at the meet, is it more of a mental test than a physical test?
100%. Yeah.
Like that first meet you went to and you didn't get a snatch, was it just like you were just so nervous?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was definitely a lack of like technical proficiency for sure. But the nerves are huge. I mean, anyone will tell you when you go out and make your first snatch, it feels like you can breathe. Like because obviously, if you miss the having to make one of the 3 is scary because it's like you go out and if you're nervous or you just pull something wrong and you miss your first one, now you only have 2 chances. And a lot of people, if they miss one, they miss the next one, and now it's like, you got to make this one or you just paid to come out here for no reason. Right. So that part can be super nerve wracking. And there's lots of games that you can play in terms of, let's say I qualified for a certain meet because I lifted a certain amount of local meet. I can't show up to that national meet and open my snatch at 65 pounds. Like I have to open it within something reasonable of what I qualified at. So you also, if you're feeling bad and having a bad day, there's only so much wiggle room for being like, okay, I'm going to start super light or start super heavy, or if you need to make a certain total at that meet, you might say, I'm going to take all 3 chances to try and hit a max, right? Like there's lots of games that you can play with that. So it is very mental for sure. I feel like you've done the work. You're not going to get stronger, more mobile in the time it takes you to get to a meet. It's all about showing up mentally.
Okay. And so what is so let's say over the past, I don't know, like, let's say 3 months, what is your like, what does your day look like from a fitness perspective? Do you work out in the morning, in the afternoon? Do you do 2 sessions, one session? What's it look like?
I do 5:30 a.m. class.
Okay,
And
rising out
then,
there. Awesome.
yeah, I love it. It's, obviously it's hard to start if you haven't done it, but once you get in a rhythm, and a lot of times I get up and I don't want to go, but I've never regretted going. And I do live in Phoenix where it's nice most of the year. So I can imagine if it was like snowing or somewhere super cold, it might be a little harder, but, so I do 5:30 class. I just think starting my day with like social interaction, getting out of breath, like feeling like I've done something productive, then come home and like make breakfast and coffee. And then it's like 7 and I've already like started my day, So I do that. And then I'll go back and train, weightlifting. Sometimes, if I'm doing like a local, if the open's coming up, maybe I'll do more Metcons in the afternoon or like a skill session. But generally now, especially I'm doing, weightlifting in the afternoon. And the other thing I like about the morning is if life happens, you already worked out, it's like, I tell myself I'm going to go every single day, maybe Sunday's a little different or Saturday, but I tell myself Monday through Friday, I'm going to go at 5:30 a.m. class and I'm going to go back in the afternoon. And I don't make it most weeks. Like I don't get all 10 sessions most weeks, I sleep through my alarm or I have a meeting that starts at 6:30 or, someone's birthday in the afternoon. Right. But if you just plan on it, then most of the time you'll get there. So, that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that's like the biggest reason why I have always done like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. just because, especially with a small family, it's like, there's always going to be some sort of reason to get in the way or try to get in the way. And
totally.
So,
and if you can make it back, great. But, and some people just do longer sessions. Personally, for my productivity, mental clarity, variety of things, I just enjoy starting my day with fitness, working, and then having that to look forward to. There's lots of people obviously that start work early and then just do a really longer session in the afternoon or what have you. I feel like if I just wake up and start working, it gets to be like 10 or 11 and I'm like, God, I just have like the wiggles. Like I need to like move my body, and then if I just do morning and then work all day, then it's like 5 o'clock and I'm like, what do we do now? Like we have a whole day left, so it helps me break up the day a little bit.
Yeah, you seem like someone that's definitely always trying to be busy, for sure.
Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
Yeah, I've never done like the whole 2 a day thing. Like usually, our workout, like our class, I'll do the class 5 to 6, and there's a group of us that'll go to the back room and kind of just do some extra accessory work or skill work or Olympic lifting. I'm usually out of there by 6:30, so like an hour and a half. I've never thought about like I should actually do that and try to see if I would actually be able to routinely get myself back into the gym after doing once.
Yeah.
Schedules, obviously, that's tough, but I should try it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a fun way to break up the day for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I didn't even ask, and I feel like I should have asked. When you're with your Olympic lifting, like what weight class are you competing in, and what is your max?
Yeah,
to get to nationals.
Yeah, so I lift generally at 64, which is I think I can usually weigh up to like 144 pounds. There's ranges, so it's like 136-ish to 144. Technically, I walk around at like 135, which is really more like in the 59 kilo weight class. I have just found, given my like eating disorder history, it's just not super healthy for me to try and like cut ever to make a weight class. And granted, that's not really a cut, you would just kind of maintain. But every time I've tried to think about competing a little bit lower, it hasn't been a super healthy experience for me. And if I was going to be super competitive, then it would make sense. But alas, I usually compete at 64, but I might compete at 59, kind of depending. But and then to date, so we typically count like PRs like in competition versus like in a CrossFit gym. So like in competition, I've clean and jerked 188. And then I've cleaned like 199, but I missed the jerk a few times. And then for snatch, I've snatched 156 competitively or like in competition. And then I've like made 165 in training.
Do you have like a lifetime like number that you want to get to?
I want to snatch 175, clean and jerk 225. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you seem like you're pretty close. So.
I think they're doable. Yeah, I think they're doable, but yeah, still got some time for sure.
Awesome. Well, good luck with that.
Thanks.
And I want to jump into nutrition because I know that you've talked about it a bunch of times, and I feel like this section, like I'm like just gonna probably listen because you're the nutrition coach, and it sounds like you have a lot of experience in it. But like you were touching upon it a little bit, like you got into nutrition coaching and you changed like your whole sort of education plan to jump into nutrition back when you were also doing bodybuilding and you're having some difficulties. Like I imagine it's been a long game of sort of learning and experimenting, but like what is your like journey? How do you sort of sum up your journey of nutrition and where you are now? Like it sounds like you've done performance nutrition. It sounds like you've done more of a balanced nutrition. Like how do you sum that all up to where you are now?
Yeah. So I have definitely done, I've done a lot of elimination diets. I did paleo for a long time. I've counted macros. I've followed meal plans. I've definitely tried a lot of different things. I've had several coaches, some of which was for actual to help. And some of it was more like market research of how other people coach, and now I would say I'm probably a balance between kind of lifestyle and performance nutrition in the sense that if I was truly training for performance, I probably would eliminate certain things like all gluten or anything that could be inflammatory, right? Or I would probably just like make my diet even more clean. However, I kind of like that balance of eating different things, still being able to go out to eat with my friends, but I'm still going to think about, I'm not just going to eat whatever before I go train. I am thinking, okay, I need higher carbs, lower fat, moderate protein. So I think it's kind of a hybrid. I am very intentional with what I eat pre and post workout for the most part. But I do have, a fair sense of balance and kind of similar to, trying to set up your training so that you're going to train every day. And then when you can't, it still works out to be quite a bit. I try to eat really well all the time because I'm not going to be perfect all the time, so at home, I eat kind of the same things pretty often. But I'm definitely going to go get bruschetta with my mom if she asks, and I'm definitely going to go eat pizza every once in a while with my friends on the weekends. And so I try to just do well most of the time so that I don't have to worry too much about the fun life stuff. I do track my macros. I work with a coach at Training Think Tank right now, Tracy, who's fantastic. And so because I was trying to lean out a little bit and then get it ready for the open and then gain a little bit more strength for getting back into a weightlifting cycle. So even when you know stuff, just the accountability, the people to bounce ideas off of, all that stuff is super helpful. So we follow a macro-based approach, which has been awesome. So yeah, that's kind of where I've ended up finding myself. But I think the biggest thing is just to try things and know why you're doing it. If you follow keto because your friend's doing it, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world, but I think that you should understand what keto is good for. And if that makes sense with what you're doing, right? Same thing with any other diet. I think just trying to understand like who it's good for and when, and know the purpose. If you think I'm going to do this forever, well, you're probably not going to do keto forever, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it for a short period of time. Just being really clear on those things.
Yeah, and I love that you, as a nutrition coach yourself, have a nutrition coach.
Yeah, totally.
Because some people would be like, "Oh my god, that's such a waste of time. Like, why would this person do this?" But like, what are is it from an accountability standpoint or like another perspective? Like, what are some of the reasons why you?
I think it's both for sure, and it's almost like it's like sometimes too much, or if you're too close, right? So like, if you told me, "Hey, I woke up and I weighed 2 pounds extra," knowing whatever I know about your history, I would have a certain response. But let's say I woke up and I gained 2 pounds, it would be really easy for me to be like, well, then I need to change my macros, or, oh, it could be this, or, oh, it could be this. And like, it's almost like now I have all of these things that I'm thinking about. Whereas it's like, I need someone that's looking at it from a different perspective to be like, no, this is what's happening, you know? So it is, the accountability is super helpful. And I do think that being able to talk through certain things and then just having someone looking at it from a different lens is super helpful.
That makes sense. Makes sense. And for like, do you still have clients for nutrition?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. When you did, and sort of like even like thinking about like sort of the general population and sort of the weekend warrior, what are some of the most significant areas of improvement that sort of gives them the most bang for their buck when they talk about nutrition?
Yeah, I would say more often than not, a lot of people just had no awareness around how much or what they were eating. And even if you think you do, I would argue you probably don't. And so tracking your food to any extent, I think can be a really great first step, even if you don't know what to do with the information. There's lots of good apps out there, but you could also just write like a note in your phone. You know, if you were to download one of the apps, I would just maybe change the goals. You know, I generally don't think, you know, like MyFitnessPal, great app. I don't think like their goals are all that personalized. It might not be good for you based on like your history. So you can almost like ignore those or change those to something crazy, like super high. So it's not like influencing what you eat, and just use it as a food diary. And I think most people just need to track for a week, because then what you'll find is some days you're eating a lot. Some days you're eating not enough. You're probably not eating enough protein. You're probably eating too much fat. And too much just in the sense that it probably isn't making you feel super good. You know, it's not like too much like from any other perspective. And so once you have all that information, then you can kind of look and be like, wow, I do eat donuts every morning when I go to Starbucks. Like, and you might not realize that. Or even if it's not that blatant, you know, if I didn't track my food, I am sure I would not eat enough protein. You know, I'll put 4 ounces in every meal and a couple eggs at breakfast and a couple eggs with pre-workout. And then I get to the end of the day and that's still not enough protein. You know, so it's like, if I wasn't tracking it, I definitely wouldn't be adding a protein shake. I wouldn't be upping those ounces to 5 ounces and things like that. So I think just the awareness is a great first step. And if you work with a nutrition coach, they should 100% ask you for that information. So if you ever go to hire someone and they just give you numbers or a meal plan, you should take that as a red flag, is my advice. So track it even just for yourself, or if you're thinking about getting help, that's a great first step just to build that awareness.
Yeah. And we've had a few nutritionists on this call, on the podcast previously, and we've talked about like RP Nutrition as a good app. And I would agree with you. Like tracking is definitely an eye opener. I've learned a lot just from tracking periodically, just once in a while, just like, I feel like I'm really not on course. So just do it for like 2-3 weeks just to check in.
Totally.
Because it is a headache to do it on a consistent basis for a lot of people. It's difficult, and it can create a bad relationship with food. But I totally understand. And it feels like more people I talk to, like everyone always says like, generally you're just not getting enough protein. That's like the biggest thing that I hear everyone say. This is just
super
like most likely.
Yeah, it's good for energy. And so there's no, I mean, like if you have a bowl of cereal at breakfast, it completely makes sense that you're hungry 2 hours later. Like you had nothing satiating in that meal, right? You didn't have any fat to control your blood sugar. You didn't have any protein to keep you satiated. So it can be frustrating if you feel like you're eating often, or you feel like you're always hungry, you're not losing weight. So that awareness is huge. And it sounds so silly, but there's so many examples of things that you can catch by doing that you might not otherwise. You know, if you have a hard time binge eating at night, you know, maybe the kids go to bed and then you want to snack a ton, or you get home for dinner and you're just like eating while you're making dinner because you're so hungry. If you just tracked your food for a week, you might see that you eat lunch at 11:30 and then don't eat until 6:30. And if your lunch was super carb heavy, it makes sense that you're hangry when you get home. So then you could track for a week and be like, okay, I'm going to add in some trail mix at 3:00 and then stop tracking and do that for a couple of weeks to how you feel. So tracking also doesn't have to be like, because you start it, you're going to do it forever. It's just get the information, make a change, or hire someone to help you make a change, and then keep going, and then take the information again, you know, and it's like, that's a much more methodical way than to try and follow like a meal plan that's not going to work a lot of the time, because life happens, right? And it's not teaching you anything. So I think the awareness is such a good first step. You'll see things that you wouldn't see otherwise.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. It's so frustrating that like protein, there isn't that many sexy options for protein, right? Like it's like everything else looks so delicious, but it's like you can only take so much like eggs or so much like chicken.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's ground chicken over there. That just looks so delicious for my 3 o'clock snack. It's like it's very frustrating thinking like every time I eat, I have to associate some sort of protein just to make
Hmm.
sure that you stay on top. It's just, man, if that was easier, you know, it would just
I
be so much
know. I
better.
try to sneak it in like small ways, and it really does all add up. I do every morning,
Yeah.
I basically do like some carb with a couple of eggs and bacon and fruit. And, instead of just a couple of eggs, I'll pour 100 grams of egg whites in there, with my fried eggs. And it's super simple. You hardly notice it, but that's like 10 grams or something, and like that adds up over the course of a day.
Hmm.
And so just little, like adding little things, 5 ounces instead of four, you know, 3 hard-boiled eggs instead of two, like it makes a
Yeah.
difference, but it is so that you don't get to the end of the day and feel like you have to have like chicken breast. I never want chicken breast before bed. So it's like you gotta add it in throughout the day.
That sounds awful. That sounds awful. So, like, what is one of your go-to meals that you hit up?
Yeah, I do oatmeal pretty religiously. I love,
Hmm.
I'll do oatmeal in the microwave. I do cinnamon, a little bit of peanut butter, mix it all up, and then add blueberries, and sometimes I'll add apples. And then I pair that with some protein, usually hard-boiled eggs. So that's like one of my go-to meals. And then I actually make crock pot, like turkey bowls most of the
Mm.
time. I kind of alternate between pork and chicken. I'll do chicken thighs, and those I literally just put chicken thighs in the crock pot. I pour an entire jar, like a regular jar of salsa in it, and then taco seasoning, and that's it. And cook it for like 5 hours. Gets all shredded in with the salsa, and it heats up super great. It stays moist. A lot of chicken, it gets dry when you reheat it, and I just put that over like microwave rice or black beans
Yeah.
with some salsa and for dinner most of the time. And then sometimes I'll do like boneless pork butt or boneless pork shoulder, and that has a few more spices. And then I'll do like oranges, some onion, and put that in the crock pot. And then same thing, make taco bowls with it. I love Chipotle. I love Mexican food. So eating it every day,
Hmm.
but in a way that's slightly better is a good approach.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you say it like that too, that it also like a lot of times we have a lot of questions that talk about like meal prepping. I don't have time for meal prep and like meal
Yeah.
prep like saves the day for sure. And a lot of those things you're just saying like they take like
So easy.
just a little bit. Yeah.
And I write out, I'm big on, I don't buy things that I don't have a plan for at the store. Cause then I end up, spending too much money, getting frustrated and wasting food. I really don't spend a lot of time cooking. It's the crock pot stuff that makes it easy. Oatmeal obviously is super easy. There's lots of good quick options for breakfast. And so I'll go to the store and be like, what am I going to eat every day this week? And it's just the same thing times 7. And then the next week, by the time you get sick of it, if you just say I'm going to have pork every night for dinner, by the time you get sick of it, it's the next week, and then have something
Right.
else. It's just like, but if I'm like, oh, I'm going to have fish on Monday, chicken on Tuesday, pork for a couple nights, I'm not going to make 7 different proteins this week. Like realistically, I just won't. So it's like I
Yeah.
just commit for a week and then change it.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah. Uh, it's surprising that like you don't get tired of food as much as you think. You won't get tired of food as quick as you actually think you do. Like you're like, it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna eat this for the next 7 days. But it's like when you're doing it, it's just like, oh, it's so convenient. I'm just gonna eat this. It's perfect. You don't even think about it.
Totally. You're saving
Yeah.
money. It's convenient.
Yeah.
And I think people write themselves off too quick. I mean, so many times, like, especially when I was bodybuilding, people would say, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, well, you don't know. Like, you just think you
Right.
couldn't, but like, and maybe you couldn't, but you're that isn't based in anything. It's just a lot of people will say, I couldn't eat the same thing several days in a row. How many times have you tried? How many times have you spent your hard earned money, spent a little bit of time prepping, and then decided that you were going to eat that for a few days and then actually not done it? Because I feel like if you did plan it that way, you probably would, and it probably wouldn't be as bad
Yeah.
as you think. So
Yeah. That's
food for
good.
thought.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you have a recent elbow injury. I did want to talk about, often we have had a few guests that talk about injury and like the mindset of overcoming injuries and stuff. Um, so like so you've been dealing with an elbow injury for the past year? Yes.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yes. And sort of when that happened, is you happened at the Arnold doing something that you love to do. Um, how did you approach that? It sounds like you're in a much better place now. It sounds like you're in a place where it's like the experience has been somewhat positive. Um, but how did you approach sort of the injury? Because oftentimes, like even myself, like I have an elbow injury, and I've had days where it's just like, man, it's just like it's so frustrating. Like it's something you want to be active, you want to be fit, you want to be durable, doing the things you do, and then somehow doing the thing you want to do is the reason why you have an injury. And it's like
Yeah.
it can lead a lot of people to a dark place.
Yeah.
So like, how did you approach that from both like a mindset perspective and just kind of, trying to see the end of it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely have bad days. I tried to do this past open workout on Thursday when it was announced, and I didn't warm up my elbow very well. In my head, I was kind of thinking I didn't want to waste any energy on my elbow. I wanted to save it for the workout, and it just totally gave up on the second set of snatches. It just would not lock out. It hurt really bad. And I was very frustrated because if you were to write an open workout for me, it would probably be 23.3. It's like all my best movements. And before my injury. And so, I definitely have days where I get super frustrated. But, I feel like I've had instances in my athletic career, like when I was playing competitive volleyball and I got really sick, with some long-term stomach issues and that wasn't my fault. And I still wasn't able to compete anymore. And then, I have really bad endometriosis and I've had to get surgery for that and miss days of training and miss days of work for that over the last handful of years. And that wasn't, that's not my fault. And granted, getting injured isn't always your fault either, but I guess I feel like life is going to throw you obstacles anyway. And so there's lots of people that would love to work out that are in wheelchairs, or people that would love to work out that for whatever reason are not able to, right? So like, who am I to sit here and, be so upset that I can't snatch 125 with a healthy elbow when I can go to the gym and do so many other things for my mental health, for my social health, for my physical health, right? So I think it's like, it sounds so cliche, but you truly have to focus on what you can do. And like when I broke my foot, I was like, I hate strict pull-ups. I really don't work on them, but like now's the time. Like I can't squat. So like we're going to get really good at pulling, and now I've done a squat cycle and I've been doing all kinds of things, that don't impact my elbow, which are all super beneficial. And like, what's the alternative? Like you just sit there and feel bad for yourself and don't get better. That seems like a terrible way to live your life. So I can say that from the place of having done it now several times and saying, I totally have bad days for sure. And there's days where I'm like, universe, this is rude. Like, I really would like to, I try to take care of myself. I try to do all the things right. Like, I definitely have those moments, but it does not take long for me to remember that there are people that want to be in the position that I'm in. And so for me to take that for granted and decide that my elbow pain is too hard, that I can't go and use what I'm able to do, feels like such a waste.
I mean, that's an amazing approach on it for sure. And it's amazing to hear that mindset shift. Cause I agree with you. Like the biggest feedback that I got, during it, cause like it happens, you're frustrated, you feel sorry for yourself. And then it's like, someone's like, well, guess what? You can focus on something else. If you can't use your legs, then you can do some sort of upper body. And there's always something else you can challenge yourself with. And it definitely does like bring like kind of like a light bulb moment to the whole scenario. It's like, oh, that is actually kind of cool. And we talked to Dave Lipson last week, and his approach on injuries, he's super overly positive and optimistic, and he went through some significant things too. So
he was my level 1 coach.
Oh, is he? Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. That's a cool level 1 coach for sure.
It's just, it's like,
yeah,
that's what I tell myself a lot. Like, what's the alternative? Like, if I don't want to do something, let's say and again, it's not like I'm perfect and I do this every day, but if I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. to go to class, what's the alternative? That I don't work out today? Well, that doesn't feel good, so it's like, then I got to go, and it's like, if you're injured and you're frustrated, what's the alternative? You're just going to stop working out? Is that really your game plan? Like, so you got to just, adapt, because it's like your other option's not good either,
You hit another great punchy statement. You should start like writing bumper stickers or something like that, or motivational quotes. Like, that's great. What's the alternative?
I've stolen them all from podcasts. I consume way too
I
much
mean,
content.
you capture the moment in such a small little sentence. It's good. I mean, I agree with you though. Like, I do wake up and there's some days where it's like, and it's like, you're right. If you ask yourself what's the alternative, you're going to sit here on your phone probably for the next 20 minutes, and then you're going to feel even shittier because now you realize that you just wasted your time instead of getting up and doing something productive. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay,
Totally.
good. Snip at that.
A true podcaster. Ooh, yeah, that moment.
Yeah. Clip that. I wanted to ask you because you're bumping shoulders. You have sort of a unique opportunity. You've had a unique opportunity to witness some of the best athletes in the world at the sort of the peak of their sport, right? You rub shoulders with some of them. You have been around the sport for a few years in both like a working capacity and now. And I'm sure you've sort of, met a lot of the athletes. What do you think sort of sets them apart? And do you ever sort of are you ever like just watching and like learning as a sponge and just bringing what they do into your lifestyle? Like, have you, like HWPO, like obviously you work with Matt and Sammy, and they're I guess his peak was a few years ago, but like, he's still the GOAT and all that sort of stuff. So like, do you find yourself, have you witnessed any of this stuff? Have you seen how they live their life and employ some of those types of things in your lifestyle?
Yeah. I would say
or are they just normal people?
They're definitely normal
fit?
people. Yeah, 100%. I would say that I haven't been privy to maybe some of those things because of the kind of work that I do. If you were a videographer or photographer and you're in Mal's training session, maybe you're a little closer to that. I'm usually, and of course this particular role is newer, but like in my last couple roles, I've been more on I'm doing supporting things. So maybe I'm like in the press room during the event, or maybe I'm like updating leaderboards while the event is happening, and during an event, you're not really learning a lot. Right. So I feel like where I'm at is maybe not in the best position to learn some of those things up to this point. Okay. But I do think, just based on the people that I work with now and the people that I've had the chance to work with, obviously consistency is a huge one. And I think people just, I think that you could probably work harder or do things better than you are, and maybe you're just not getting creative enough. I think about, not when I was working there, of course, but if anyone's read Matt Fraser's book or maybe heard him on a podcast, he talks about how closer to competition, he wouldn't even like use a knife to cut things in the kitchen because he couldn't risk cutting himself and then not being able to hold a bar. Right. And I would argue that most people are not going to that extreme. And so I think that there's things, if you even tailor it back a couple steps, I bet there are things that the elite are doing that people aren't thinking about or aren't considering, and then just doing them with consistency. You might think, I'm not going to go out on the weekends because I want to make quarterfinals or semifinals, but then there's a wedding and you're going to go to the wedding, and you're going to stay up late that night and maybe you'll drink or what have you. Right. So then you'll make exceptions. And I think I'm a big believer in balance. I think that that's great, but you need to be real with yourself and ask if the work you're doing is aligned with the goals that you want. And so I think that the great often miss out on a lot of things to be great. And a lot of people are not willing to do that or don't see it as an option, Yeah.
The level of sacrifice and drive to one common goal is really, yeah. Josh Bridges said that a few times too. Like, he hasn't been to a wedding in like a decade. There was like a time period he hadn't been to a wedding or a birthday or like any of those types of events. He just missed them all.
Yeah.
And he was okay with it. And, he says, if you want to do
the choice you have to make. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And even for yourself, like, it seems like you are a person that's, actively busy all the time. You're training's a priority, nutrition is a priority, your career is a priority. How do you balance it all? Like, so it sounds like you have somewhat of an end goal in all these different categories. a passion for building something great. Like, how do you balance it all? You travel a lot,
Yeah.
how do you balance it all? Where do you find the motivation to kind of keep going?
I use my calendar religiously. I feel like I need to save my brain space for immediate things, creative things. Truly doing my laundry is in my calendar. Going to the grocery store is in my calendar. Feeding my fish is in my calendar. I mean, like literally everything that like makes my life run is written down so that I don't have to remember it to do them. And I write down very silly, specific things. If I'm going on a trip tomorrow, in my calendar till today, it'll say like, do laundry, go to Target to get whatever you need, right? Like, and so I work backwards in a lot of those things, probably in a little bit of a neurotic way, but it works for me. And a lot of those things are like tasks, so it's not like they're assigned to specific times. But that helps me manage my time to get everything in, and I don't really struggle to stay motivated. I guess I kind of look at it. Certainly there's days I don't want to go to the gym, or there's days that, not working sounds better, right? I'm still human, but I guess it kind of comes back to the alternative thing. Like, would I just not accomplish things? That seems like a boring way to live your life. I don't know, like.
Do you actively like, do like, you write down your vision, and do you actively do goal setting? Do you actively check in with yourself to kind of like make sure that you are on the path that you want to keep going?
Yeah. I used to be very into that. For years, I would make big things out of New Year's, and I would have like daily check-ins and writing like 10-year goals. And I've gone through seasons and phases of that. At this point in my life, and over the last probably year or so, I haven't done that as much on purpose. I feel like over the last couple of years, I've had such a change in trajectory in terms of career and opportunities, and it almost feels limiting to me to pick something because I don't even know what I want yet. Like I didn't know that working at HWPO would be possible for me until I worked at Morning Chalk Up. And I didn't know working at Morning Chalk Up would be possible for me until I was working at WHOOP and became friends with some people that worked at Morning Chalk Up. And it's like, it's almost hard for me to think of the plan because I don't even know what's possible, and there's jobs that are, my job at HWPO didn't exist a couple years ago, and so I don't do as much of that anymore because it almost feels like, well, I don't know what to write down. I'm just like working really hard and trying to be nice to people and trying to learn lots of things. And then it ends up working out, and so it's, I kind of been following that process thus far. And I'm sure I'll circle back at some point to getting more specific about some of those things. But the last, year or so, I've focused a lot more on like personal growth, gaining knowledge, gaining skills, more of those kinds of things, and then letting some of the goals take care of themselves.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I know I've gone through that, the whole system, kind of like you're in it, sometimes you're out of it. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for jumping in the call. Thanks so much for sharing your story, and some practical tips and some really punchy clips.
Totally.
And yeah, I guess I was going to ask one last thing. You recently started a new podcast. Can you kind of tell some of the listeners on this podcast kind of what it's about and what you guys are trying to do with it?
Yeah. So the Gym Class Heroes podcast is on Spotify and Apple, and it's with my friend Kiefer, who is the assistant coach of Underdog Athletics up in Vegas. And we have a really fun banter. I had a podcast, the Hey Preslie podcast, for about 4 years that was more of a lifestyle podcast. Super enjoyed it. But it's been so fun to have someone else to bounce off of and have more of a conversation with. And our goal is just to make fitness, maybe more specifically CrossFit, approachable, and to talk about everything but the top 1%. So especially coming from journalism, there's a huge need and huge market for talking about who's winning the CrossFit games and who's really close to them and like the very competitive side. But there's also a ton of CrossFitters that don't care or that doesn't feel relevant. And so we're truly trying to champion the everyday CrossFitter with conversations, knowledge, interviews that help them continue to better themselves, feel like they have a place to basically like come hang out and chat about CrossFit with their friends, but that they can take anywhere. So we started that a few months ago. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, it's Gym Class Heroes Pod on Instagram or Gym Class Heroes on wherever you get your podcasts.
Awesome. And yeah, I've listened, and the first few episodes have been super cool. So I would definitely encourage people to add the links to the show notes for sure. It's been a cool podcast.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Preslie. Really appreciate the time and the sit down. And thanks everyone for listening. It's been awesome. Good start to season 3, and we'll have a few more awesome guests coming up in the future. So thanks everyone.